Hey, what's happening, my fearless networking friends? Todd Falcone here. Welcome to toddfalcone.com. I get asked all the time, when's the best time to prospect? And there's kind of multiple answers to that question. The number one is when you can. So it depends on, everybody's got different situations. So my first suggestion is whenever you have the available time to prospect, since it is the number one activity that leads to money in this business, then you spend time prospecting. Now, if you can control your schedule, of course, we want to reach people when they're most likely to be receptive to receiving a phone call. So calling somebody at 6:30 in the morning, probably a little bit too early. Calling somebody at, the average person who maybe works a 9-to-5 job, calling them at 11:30 at night, probably is not going to work out so well for you. So again, you got to be thinking about, and everybody's got a different schedule. Everybody's got a different situation. So for me, it's like number one is whenever I got the time to prospect, I'm going to prospect, because that's the way that we make money in this business. Bringing in new customers, bringing in new distributors, and we've got to spend as much time as possible doing that activity. So typically, like, my prospecting time is from about 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning until maybe 8 or 9 o'clock at night. That's a pretty broad window. For a part-time network marketer, most of your time's probably going to be in the evenings or in the in-between times, those little crooks and crannies of your day, right? The 5 minutes here, the 10 minutes there. By the way, that's another thing that I talk about all the time. When you have a commute or you got a little break here, some time, little pockets of time, it's important to make use of that time, especially if you're part-time and you ultimately want to go full-time. If you're not looking at your time in that manner, like, hey, I got 5 minutes here, that's a phone call. I got 10 minutes here, maybe that's a phone call or two. Those things add up. The compound effect of making those phone calls over an extended period of time can turn into a lot of phone calls, a lot of prospecting time. So now there's no hours of prospecting. There's no one rule for prospecting. Like for me, when it comes to recruiting professionals, well, when's the best time to recruit a professional? Well, because I'm typically calling these people in their place of work, I want to reach them when they're working. But you also have to think about something as well. For example, let's say I was calling into, and I wanted to recruit a bunch of restaurant managers into my business, for example, which is a great category of professionals to target. Calling them at lunch hour or dinner hour, no, because that's when they're super busy. They don't have time to take the call. But getting them way before lunch, or that gap between lunch and dinner, if you're calling into a specific type of restaurant, it might be a good idea for you to know what the hours are. Their busiest hours are lunch, their second busiest hours dinner, for example. So calling in those in-between times when they're at work, but they're not so heavily busy. Just like you walk into a restaurant, let's say at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, it's not going to be nearly as busy as if you walked in there from noon until 2 o'clock. So just think about, who am I calling? And would this person be receptive to my call at this time, or am I catching them when they're super slammed? The one thing you don't want to do is catch somebody when they're super duper busy. Now, we could also make this assumption, and people do all the time, and it's a way for them to talk themselves out of actually making a phone call. Oh, that 5 to 7 or 8 p.m., they're at dinner, or they're having family time. I don't want to bug them. You got to nix that out of your mind and just go, look, I don't know what time people eat dinner. Every family is different. Maybe back in the day, everybody ate dinner at 6 o'clock. Back in the 50s, the guy would come home from dinner or come home and the family would have dinner, sit down. People are a little bit different today. So don't use that as an excuse not to make phone calls. Number one, make the calls when you can. And if you can't control your schedule, but you've got this window to prospect, that's the best time for you to prospect. The second thing is to start looking at who you're calling into and think about, is this a good time for me to call this person? So I've prospected as early as 7:30 in the morning. I've prospected, honestly, as late as 11 p.m. And I figure kind of like when I was part-time, and that 9 to 11 p.m., especially if I was working leads that I had generated on my own, people that had requested information about making money, I figured if you'd requested information about making money on my website, that you were serious about it. So if I called you at 10:30 or 10:45 or 9 o'clock, whatever the time was, I probably 1 in 50 people might go, oh, it's late. I'm going to bed. I'm like, hey, no worries, man. I'll call you tomorrow. But if that enabled me to make an extra 20 or 30 phone calls that night to expand my business, then I would certainly do it. So those are some little simple ways to look at when is the best time to prospect. The best time, again, is when you can. So That's it for today's video. Thanks so much for plugging in. We'll see you on another one. Have an amazing day.